Very.
So, what this podcast is about us chronicling our journey, my journey through getting healthy, trying to, increase my wellness, especially as I age. I want to, don't want to outlive my wellness. I want to, have a healthy aging process, but also be healthy as I age. So, chronicle our journey, but we also bring on professionals and experts in their field from time to time. And today is no different. We have a great guest with us, Gregory Ann Cox, and I'm going to let Terry intro her.
Yes, Greg has been helping women at midlife and beyond age in good health, in a good mood, and a body they love, or at least have made peace with, for a decade. She does not buy into the conventional wisdom that this is what happens at your age when we feel like crap. She is the author of Your Genes Do Not Determine the Size of Your Genes. There is no deprivation and no one way to live and be healthy and enjoy life. There are, however, certain principles of longevity that we would do well to adopt so we can beat the odds when it comes to disease and decline. She is a former professional chef and currently also a copywriter for the health and personal development fields. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. I'll have to
That
get
was
it
all
from
you.
Oh, we have to laugh and say we love the title of the book, of
Yeah.
course. Your genes don't determine the size of your genes. I love that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit first off before we get too deep into this, kind of, how you found yourself here writing the book. Just kind of talk about your journey for a minute.
Well, I don't know how far you want to go back, but
When I was
I think it
three,
must have started because I was a chubby tween teen, right? Like young teenager. And when my grandmother, who was a seamstress, used to sew some things for me. And I remember one time we were looking at pattern books in the store. They used to have these big books, and you would go and you'd pick out the pattern, and then somebody would get it out of a drawer. And she kept, like, I guess the last time she had sewn for me was like the last I would fit into that normal. And we had to go get the chubby book at one point, and I was just like horrified
Yikes.
because that word chubby meant something to me. She didn't put that on me. I took it to mean something.
Yeah.
So that started a journey of disordered eating, not eating, all kinds of things throughout until I was 30 something. Oddly enough, my career choice was to become a chef. So I was feeding all these people and I could not feed myself and be happy about it. It just was, bad for many, many years. But after cooking for 27 years, I woke up one day and I said, I cannot cook another meal. I have to do something different. So I got certified as a coach because although I thought I would go back and finish a psych degree, I didn't live anywhere where there was a school that I could go to.
Okay.
And coaching turned out to be a really great choice for me. And because I had studied nutrition, as I started my life coaching business, I started to get people that would say, well, you look kind of healthy. I'm in great shape. What do you do? And I thought, well, let's do that then. So I transitioned to health coaching. And when I was a chef, I worked for a heart surgeon, and I got to see heart surgery. He performed heart surgery, and he allowed me in the OR with him to watch this woman have a quadruple bypass. And when he held the heart in his hand and showed me what her lifestyle had done to the heart, encased it in fat, really, made it very, very sluggish. He did this because he wanted us to understand the importance of lifestyle choices on our health. And let me tell you, it had a huge impact.
Oh, I bet.
So this many years later, that stayed with me. And I thought, I can't just cook healthy food and just help people with, nutrition advice and weight loss. I really wanted to have a platform to get more people the opportunity to hear something that might shake up their beliefs, open their mind to another idea that they hadn't been introduced to before, let them know that there were alternatives to the Western medical model. I have no problem with the Western medical model, but it's better at disease management and emergency care than it is wellness and prevention care. So I guess that's where I started and how I got here.
It's funny you mentioned the chubby girl because there was it's in an old memories group that I'm a part of, and they posted this ad last week that it was actually there was a chubby girl clothing line. I don't know if it's clothing line or pattern line, but that was actually the ad copy, and they were just saying, how long would this ad last today? Because they had a picture of a girl who, obviously, she wasn't that chubby, and then down at the
Right.
bottom in huge type was chubby girl.
Oh my gosh. I want that.
It was ridiculous. Anyway, so it's funny that you say that because
Yeah.
a lot when you first said it, I was thinking, oh, well, that was just your grandma relating that to get the bigger patterns, but there was actually something called that as well. So,
Oh yeah, no, it was the chubby section of the
oh my
book.
gosh. Well, I think that's good that, it's good knowing our genes. We're not predetermined. We can make changes. I think that's the, something we want to talk about a little bit is there's so many different things out there. It's not just because it worked for your neighbor doesn't mean it's going to work for you. We really have to look through, find out what suits our lifestyle, what we can stick with. That's the main thing. You could do a lot of different things. Can you do it day number 2 and day number 3?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I say there's no one way.
Yeah.
And to your point about finding what works for us is really important. And whether it's including meat, fasting, eating 3 meals a day, whatever
Yeah.
really suits our physiology is where we have to go. Or, as you said, we're not going to stick to it.
Yeah.
Day 2, 3, 4, 5 might be great. We're on a high. We're doing this new thing. And if it's not and now this is not to say that when we make changes, sometimes we're very uncomfortable with the change.
All right.
But for the long haul, so when people go on, let's say, a keto diet, again, that is a miracle diet for a lot of people with certain types of diseases, inflammatory diseases, diabetes. But for other people, it's too constrictive. They
Yeah.
can't just eat this thing and not have that thing once in a while. Because,
Right.
if you're on a keto diet and then you eat like a huge smoothie one morning, now your body's all out of whack. You've had a ton of sugar and, but then people are like, but I want to have, so it's just hard. Either that, or you say, okay, I think you said, we were doing really good, and then I had I don't know what you called it. It was a funny
Come
expression.
apart.
Come apart.
Come apart. If you want to plan for those, that's great too. I'm going to do this 6 days a week. There used to be a dietary, idea that you would do no carbs all week or very, very low carbs all week for 6 days. And on Sunday, you would eat whatever you wanted. And
Yeah.
somehow they said that it helped with your weight loss. I don't remember the science behind it. It sounds a little sketchy now. I liked it. I did it because I wanted all
Like
those
the
carbs
idea, yeah.
on Sunday.
Yeah, and that's well, I can only speak for me, but that is my downfall. If I'm doing something and can stick with it, having that break or taking that day off or that cheat day or whatever people refer to it as, it just totally resets me to the bad ways, and I'm off.
Oh,
And so,
really?
yeah, I have just found over the years that I'm just much better just being restrictive and not allowing that stuff to creep back in. I just can't handle it. Now, I'm not saying there are other people who obviously can, and that's great for them. But yeah, unfortunately, I have a couple M&Ms and I've got to have 200 of them.
You and my husband should never get together.
It is hard. I mean, it's like if you do that, if you're restrictive for 6 days and then you have one day, you just wait. It's like waiting it's like today, it's Friday. Oh my gosh, it's Friday. The weekend's coming. Well,
Yeah.
we got a lot of work going on this weekend, but it's Friday. We're excited. So just waiting, something to look forward to, but then you just go overboard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to go overboard.
Well, and Terry can handle it. She's much better at eating a little bit of something and just being able to walk away from it, where, not me. It's like if I'm in for a dime, I'm in for a dollar, so I'm going to have it all.
Well, and I wasn't always like that. I mean, I used to have to give me the whole bag. I'm not sharing. Get your own bag.
Well, and some of this, I guess, we can attribute to mindset, beliefs. I mean, because I really believe that's important, because I've had people ask, over the years, talk about the surgery or doing this or doing that, but I'm not against that. I'm just more to the point of, if I don't change my thinking, doesn't matter what I do mechanically like that, I'm going to end up right back in the same place, because I've seen people like that. It's like, they have the surgery, they do good for a while, and then the next thing you know, they're at the Mexican food place having a big old plate of enchiladas and 4 margaritas, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was just like 10,000 calories you just consumed there, and so
And $20,000.
so anyway, I think the mindset and our beliefs and what we can do, I think that's very important to address it, to realize it, to be honest with ourselves about it, and then try to make changes there.
Yeah, and our beliefs can be tricky. And what is a belief? A belief is a thought we think. That's all. We just keep thinking it because somebody told us something about it, and we said, "Oh, that's true for me," or "That's true about the world. The world is flat." That was a belief that we had until we could prove otherwise. So when we have beliefs about our body, my body doesn't lose weight. I've tried everything, doesn't work. Then we're less likely to believe that we can and try something new, or we try it, but half-heartedly in the back of our minds, we're like, it's never going to work. It just doesn't work for me. And that's one of the most limiting mindset traps, is to believe something will not work. And I'm a little bit fresh as a coach sometimes. And when I have somebody say, well, you don't know me. We all want to be special, right? No,
Right.
my story is different. You don't know my body.
Right.
And I always say, you don't know my process. So if you will try my process and do it exactly the way I say, you might get a result. No guaranteed, but are you willing to try, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Are people willing to try something that they think they've tried, but unless they've tried it with that chef, coach, nutritionist, whatever, they haven't tried it.
Right. I think that works for life in general because, there's an old saying that is this going to work or isn't it going to work? And the answer is yes, it's whatever you believe of that. And so, feeding ourselves that positive information that I can do this, I cannot eat that, or I think that really fits to a lot of things in life. We have to flip that switch and be positive and always be feeding ourselves the inspirational, positive information. And there's another great saying that about inspiration. It's like, do you really need that every day? I mean, you have to, you get it once, doesn't last forever. And somebody said, yeah, well, it's like taking a bath. I mean, you've got to do it every day. And some days are harder than others. We wake up and feel like, I'm not going to make it today. We got to flip that switch and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. And I can do this. And if I go wrong, then we got to immediately say, you know what, that was just a one-time thing. I can get back on this and do good. Whatever, exercise, eating, a lot of things in life, I think, fall under that.
Yeah, and the whole good and bad thing is another trap. I was so bad last night. I ate 14 cookies, whatever.
Yeah.
And then there are good and bad foods. Like a cookie is obviously a bad thing if we put it in the bad category.
Yeah.
It may be detrimental. It may not make us feel good, but food by its very nature is just a thing. It's just a food.
Right, exactly. No, that's a good point.
I really believe that everything can be included in a healthy way of eating. I just believe that is the truth. And you were saying earlier that Terry can, walk away from a bag of something. Well, my husband, I brought out a bunch of ingredients and he said, what are these chocolate chips doing on the counter? Because he's always trying to lose weight. I said, well, I feel like making cookies. He said, you can't make cookies. I said, well, I'm going to make cookies. Why? I said, because you'll eat one and I'll eat 200.
Right.
Well, one batch doesn't make 200, but I get your point. I'll give them away. I just felt like having a cookie.
Yeah.
And I want him to have a cookie too, but I won't leave enough around so that he can, stuff himself. He doesn't sit down and eat the whole bag. It's like one.
Just take 2 out and give
Then there's tea time at 4. We have another cookie. It's easy for them to disappear. I understand.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's why we do better with nothing around for me, but she'll buy something and have it in the cabinet, and then she'll take one bite of it and come back a couple days later expecting that's still going to be there, which that's
a 3 bags in here. Where'd they go?
I know, I'm trying to change her mindset on that one, that you leave it around, it's going to end up being disappeared pretty quickly.
Well, and how you talk about hormones being something that affects our I mean, the eating process and well, you talk about it because I'm not
Okay.
doing it very well.
So whenever we mention the word hormones, people think about their sex hormones.
Yeah.
Very important hormones, but there are other hormones in the body, and there are certain things that all of the hormones are messengers. So if a hormone is released, let's just say our thyroid is activated by the pituitary gland by a hormone trigger, a hormone called TSH,
Right.
thyroid stimulating hormone. There are other hormones like insulin. And so, anyway, on and on throughout the body, stress creates hormones, food creates hormone, not creates them, but has them release and move around in the body. And certain foods help the body release too much of certain things and not be able to use other things. Too much insulin, too much blood sugar, then there's too much insulin circulating, then we get insulin resistance and inflammation. So the way to manage your hormones, and hormones are also, in the case of certain hormones, fat storing hormones
Right.
and fat releasing hormones. But when we eat a certain way, which is usually too much sugar, too much starch, we get too many of the fat storage hormones. And when we store fat, where does it go? In the cells. We get fat. Fat cells get fatter, we get fatter, right? So it's very important to manage your blood sugar. And that's the simplest way to describe it. Forget all the names of the hormones. If you eat only enough of the foods that produce enough blood sugar so that you have energy and vitality, you won't have to worry about having too many hormones cascading around in your body. If
Interesting.
you eat, good healthy protein, lots of the right kinds of vegetables, not just the potatoes and the beets and the corn. But,
Yeah.
and again,
You
we're all
listening,
sitting
Roy?
here nodding and everybody listening is like, yeah, 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 I heard of that before.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. I always tell people have one good carb a day if you're trying to lose weight, and that's it. Like if bread's your thing, have yourself a good old slices or two of toast, sandwich, whatever, cereal, oatmeal, that kind of thing. But it's easy to add it up if you have it at breakfast and then you have it at lunch and you have
Yes.
it at dinner. Before you know it, you've really had more carbs than especially at dinner, than you're going to burn off,
Yeah.
because our activity usually declines in the evening.
And
Yeah.
is
And since that's, oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and is it better to eat the carbs in the morning or in the evening? Probably.
So if you are more active in the morning, I would say eat them in the early part of the day.
Okay.
Even if you exercise after lunch or late afternoon. There's a saying: eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper.
Yeah.
Ah,
So I would include the carb ratio that way, right?
Okay.
If you're a
Yeah.
carb person, get them in and get them out, use them up.
Which gets us to the point of looking at labels, because I think once I started looking, I was very surprised at where they hide the carbs at. And there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think, or even just making a different choice, like the type of bread that you eat. I know there's some that are 20 carbs a slice, but I think Terry's found something that's more like 10 or 12. Just little
Mhm.
bitty adjustments like that can really go a long way.
Yeah, and what you have with that carb, right? So if we're just, eating like when I was a kid, like Wonder Bread with some margarine on it by the slice after slice after slice, that's not a good idea.
Right.
But if you have your bread with some turkey, eggs, some maybe tofu cheese, some kind of protein, it helps slow the absorption of the carbs into your system.
No.
So you're not getting like a blood sugar rush.
Yeah.
It takes more time to digest it, so it takes more time for it to be released into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
okay.
One thing you mentioned earlier that has gotten a lot of attention lately is inflammation, and I mean, I know I don't. I guess it's a chicken or the egg. Some people are like, yeah, the inflammation comes. Some people are like, no, what we eat. I mean, I guess it's a combination in reality, but it can be the starting of a lot of things that really go wrong for us in our body.
Yeah, so that chicken and the egg thing is, does disease cause inflammation or does inflammation cause disease?
Yeah.
And I would have to say that they're leaning in the direction of, we create a situation of inflammation in the body, that makes the body more susceptible to the diseases of inflammation.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds crazy, but you can't, I don't think we can have inflammation. I mean, if you're sick, if you have a virus or you cut yourself, you're going to get inflammation around the spot of the cut, right?
Yeah.
You've seen the redness, you feel the heat, you get a fever. That's also inflammation. But what we're talking about is systemic internal inflammation, where things like the arteries get narrower, the digestion gets slower, all kinds of processes are not able to function fully. And of course, when the system's not working right, it's going to break, some parts it's going to break down.
Yeah.
So, and stress is a huge creator of inflammation in the body. You wouldn't think that what you're thinking, because of course stress is usually what we're thinking about, the thing that we think is causing us the stress, right?
Right.
Like the traffic is not inside of us, but the traffic is suddenly making us stressed out and crazy. So that's something to watch too for people. It's not just diet.
Yeah, and that's where we can, my thing is we call worrying around here borrowing trouble, because you can worry. That thing may not come true. And we kind of had an incident like that happened yesterday.
Oh,
I
man.
was kind of like stressed out the night before, thinking about how I was going to handle this
Couldn't
and what's going to
sleep.
happen. And I tossed and turned, and then all of a sudden it didn't materialize, which is like, what a wasted time. But I'm sure, like you said, that the stress and everything it released in my body, probably not that awesome for that either.
Well, and especially not sleeping is another contributor to weight gain
Yeah.
or hard to lose, increases belly fat.
Yeah.
So that borrowing trouble is also borrowing from your wellness on the
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah. And that was actually something I just wrote down, was that sleep component, because with me, we've talked about this a lot, but sleep is a big trigger for a lot of things. Don't want to exercise, don't feel like it, can't move. Also, I tend to feel like I want to eat more carbs and stuff like that to try to get that quick boost of energy. And you kind of get on that roller coaster of, the ups and the downs of that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Your brain is craving, your brain needs energy. Your brain is one of the biggest energy sucks in the whole body, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's not up to par, if you haven't given it what it needs in the form of rest, and it hasn't been able to wash itself, clean itself out, it's going to go for the quickest energy source, which is sugar.
Yeah.
So any, carb that turns into sugar, that kind of thing. It's very, very hard for people to manage their cravings when they're tired.
And again, that kind of leads into listening to our body, because I tell you where I got in trouble years ago was, at night, 8 or 9 o'clock, I would start getting tired. And so what I would do is, reach for something to eat, have a unhealthy snack. I'm not going to say bad anymore. We'll have an unhealthy snack, right before bedtime, or load up on a lot of things. And it became a cycle of, I don't mind admitting, there was a point that, 9 or 10 o'clock, I would run up to the convenience store and get a, bag of chips or this or that, just to try to have that. And I still offer Terry every now and then at 10 o'clock at night. I'll say, I'll run up and get you a candy bar if you really want one. But
Especially when I'm stressing out. He's like, you okay? What you need? I need chocolate.
But I think that, have I been smart and just realized what's going on, it's like my body just needs sleep. I just need to lay down to get that rest instead of,
And your
feeding it.
belly doesn't need to be full.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the hard
It's
part.
true. It's true. The more empty our belly is before we go to sleep, the better sleep, generally speaking,
Yeah.
we have. And we also don't get those acid indigestion in the middle of the night things.
Right.
Yeah.
And wake up all bloated and ugh.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking the other day about, we were eating pretty good, and it was lunch, and she said, I told her, so I feel just a little bit of a hunger pain, and what I have to realize is that is not the sound of, or it's not the feeling of death coming upon me. It's like it's okay. It's natural. You feel a little hungry. You're probably going to survive for another, 30 or 45 minutes till you can eat something healthy.
Yeah, we're so conditioned to eat on schedules,
Yeah.
right? Especially people who work in a job that they have like a lunchtime break,
Right.
and you eat whether you're hungry or not. But it was a habit I had to break. Definitely was, especially when I don't do intermittent fasting. You guys were talking about that earlier. The way Oh, so sorry. The way
I haven't heard that sound in
most
forever.
people, most people, I'm not a practicing intermittent faster, but
Right.
I have, since I learned about it, started to make sure that I don't eat at least for 12 hours, and I try to go 13 or 14. It's easier in the summer because I leave the house early and go do work. But in any event, that got me to realize that I'm often not very hungry first thing in the morning.
Right.
But I used to try to get my food and coffee in so that I could run outside and be outside and do things,
Right.
and then come back in and be in the office and do like that kind of stuff. Now I realize, and then if I have my coffee at 8:30 or 9 and some late breakfast, and my husband's eating at noon because he started at 6:30 eating, his breakfast, I don't have to eat with him.
Right.
I don't. I'm
Yeah.
not hungry yet.
Yeah.
It's not
But
the
it's,
rule.
it's just a reconditioning kind of thing.
Well, and there's been a lot of talk, and I guess there's a lot of evidence that our body. You can correct me if this is a misstatement, but it's like when our bodies are so focused on digestion, it's not healing other things, and it's not refreshing other systems in our body. Is that close?
Yeah, I would say, I'm not an expert in that particular category, but my understanding is that when we can have more hours between digestive sessions, you're right, the body can heal, but also when our blood sugar can finally go way back, down to base level, then the body rejuvenates. It's not, like you said, spending all that energy, because digestion is a intensive process. Let's put it that way. Well, depending on what's eaten, obviously. If you're having
Right.
chicken broth, not so much.
Right. Yeah, and we haven't had I guess we've been kind of playing around with it the last week or so, and I haven't, surprisingly, breakfast is my favorite meal, and it would be when I would get up and eat the most. But surprisingly, I have some ghee, and I'll put a little ghee in my coffee to help me, but I haven't really been having that, the dire feelings of hunger or feeling bad or running down on energy, leading up to us eating around noon or so. It's
That's
been
great.
interesting. Yeah. And again, we're like everybody else. We're kind of searching around, trying new and different things just to see what works, what helps us feel better. Again, we always recommend go to your health professional, let them, tell you what's going to work for you, or let them monitor these changes that you're making. Please don't do any crazy stuff on our recommendation, but, always seek out a doctor, dietitian, or somebody like that can help you with that process. But, we enjoy kind of testing things out because it's hard for us, and I say us, it's hard for me because we tried the cooking angle, back at the end of last year when we first started this show. Terry got into this culinary medicine cooking class, and we did it once a week, which it was fun, awesome, a lot of time for us together, but it's so time consuming. It just wasn't sustainable for us every night to spend, 2 hours preparing a meal.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's because my knife skills are not very good. It just
Yeah.
takes me a while. I got to get the chopped up stuff.
It's okay. Whatever you need. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, the night it's not sustainable, like you said. I try to make. I mean, I'm a chef. I could make anything that I wanted, but most meals are very simple. I broil some fish, I broil some chicken, and I throw a chop on the grill. Or we have salad. We have a lot of salad and a lot of veggies, and because I don't feel like cooking either at the end of the day, especially.
Right. Yeah, and that the vegetable part, it's hard for me because up until about 6 months ago, I thought there were only two vegetables: potatoes and corn. I didn't know there was a whole other category of vegetables
There's
out
a
there.
whole world out there.
Yeah, I say squash, and his face just.
Yeah. But it's. I guess it's also. I have to give Terry credit. She's very inventive of seasoning, and so because
That's
I
a
need
nice
a
way
little,
to put it.
yeah, I just need a little crunch, and that's one thing I noticed that when you do the vegetables a lot, I don't get that that texture maybe has something to do with that.
Oh yeah. Texture is a huge way that we get satiated with our food. It's not just flavor.
Right.
It starts with our eyes, to be honest, and then what we can smell, and then what we taste, and texture is the fourth component of a satisfying meal.
Well, and raw, we don't eat enough raw vegetables, I don't think. Maybe that would
Yeah,
help.
there's a doctor, trying to think of his name. It begins with a D. Anyway, an amazing guy who, when I met him, he was practicing as a holistic or osteo. And then he opened a whole school to train other people that wanted to do that. But he used to say, if all you did every day was one bowl of cooked and one bowl of raw, like a good sized cereal bowl, one of cooked, one of raw, and raw could be a salad, lettuce, spinach, broccoli, whatever, that would change people's lives because most people
Ah,
don't even get that much in it.
well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Not raw cookie
Yeah.
dough, right? Does that
Sorry.
count? Not raw cookie dough?
Oh dear. Well, stick some broccoli florets in the top of
Stuff
it.
it with broccoli and zucchini.
Yeah, because that's, just like our diet or my diet was, usually meat, the potato, the corn, and bread. Those were the three categories. And so, really making that swap over to being more mindful about the vegetables, about how we cook them. The other thing that we've done a lot too lately is the smoothies. I don't know if you do that, recommend that, but it's a good way to put all that stuff together. We put a little protein powder in on top of it, and it really kind of masks the taste if you're uncomfortable eating some vegetables.
So you do put veggies in your smoothies?
Yeah, we've been
Good. Yeah, that's
doing
great.
Spinach and kale
spinach and
and
kale, things like that.
avocado.
We had a guest on that was just talking about he was a and I can't recount the whole story. It was on our aging show, and so he something about the eyes, and so what him and his wife did, they cut breakfast out with the gluten and started having the smoothie in the morning because of some score that has to do with your eyes. But anyway, they scored really high on this because they cut that gluten out in the morning and just did the smoothies with some protein and spinach or kale, and it's
Is that Dr.
easier.
Travis?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. It's much easier for me to stomach to do that. But, it's just, again, I think we get back to the first thing we talked about is our mindset and our belief. I've got this belief I don't like vegetables or can't eat them or whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just gradually saying, look, I've got to, in order to be healthy, there's just no way around that. Or my belief is there's no way that we have to, that has to be a large part of our consumption every day.
Yeah, and I like the way you put that. I have to, right? This is just, there's no avoiding it. At some
Right.
point, we have to be the adult in the room for ourselves
Oh my
and
God. Don't say things
send the
like that.
2-year-old to the corner who
Yeah.
wants the ice cream
Yeah.
every night
Right.
and say, whatever it takes, I'm going to figure out how to do this
Yeah.
because, life, where, aging is inevitable, but I don't want to end up that I can't eat or enjoy my life because I didn't take the time to say now is the time for me to change some habits, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes people's digestion gets so bad they can't eat X, Y, or Z. No spicy food, no tomato. No, I've seen people get older and lose so many of the categories of things that they love, but
Right.
it's mostly because they didn't nurture like a healthy biome. We talk about
Yeah.
the biome these days, and a healthy digestive system and good sleep habits. It all adds up. There's no escaping it. I mean, some people
Yeah.
do, right? Do we all know somebody who's old and like has been smoking and drinking and they're still like
Yeah.
rocking on the porch having parties with their friends?
Right.
I would love that to be me. I don't know whether it's going to happen. So on the erring on the side of caution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So try to take care of it before the choice is taken away from you. And
Exactly.
the older we get, the clearer it becomes that, oh, okay, this could happen, and the more people we talk to now, it's like, oh, we have to do it.
Mhm.
Well, to quote Willie Nelson, he said, "There's more old drunks than there is old doctors." So I guess I'll have another round. But
I'll have what he's having.
That's right.
yeah, we don't want to promote that. That was a joke for anybody that heard that. So, but it is. I mean, it's important because I don't think I obsess over it, but it's become much more clear in my thoughts that I can't go into the next phase of my life being heavy, out of shape, not, getting out and walking and doing these things because it's eventually going to catch up and we will outlive that wellness and then be a burden to somebody else, or At the very least, we have to sit in a chair and watch the rest of the world go by and not be able to participate in that. So I think that's, kind of was one thing that really got us started in this journey. And that's the one thing that kind of keeps me searching around, trying to find something that, will fit for me and that works good for me.
And is sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can always switch it up. It could work for a year and feel really good. And then one day you think, you know what? I did well on a plant-based diet.
Right.
And now I really I've read countless stories of mostly young women, interestingly, that went vegan for years. And then one day they weren't well, they had no iron, they couldn't get pregnant, whatever the story was. And they added a little bit of meat protein back into their diet
Right.
and changed everything. So nothing is set in stone that we decide about our diets.
Exactly. So, what are some? I know we're getting pretty close and long on time, but just for a minute, what are some things that genes? How can we overcome that? I mean, I guess is that just mindset, thinking that this is our body and we can't do this, or, what are some tips or tricks that you can help us with?
Okay, so there were a lot of subjects in that question.
I was like,
I'm
what
going to go
part
back
should
to
I
the
go
genes
Right, right.
part. Let's start with the genes part.
Yeah.
So genes, I literally just did this research yesterday for a client that I'm copywriting for, and our genes, by all the experts, that this was a meta study, they say between 20 and 30% of who we are and our longevity possibility is determined by our genes. That leaves a lot of room for
Right.
us to have an impact on our genes. And one of the things, there's a woman named Pam Peak. She's a motivational person, doctor. She's a physician, but did a lot of motivational speaking, and she did a lot of coaching with women. And she says, genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Interesting. I love that.
And
That's good.
yeah, I think that's a great metaphor for, we come in with certain proclivities, and you could get every gene tested in your body and you will find anomalies, you'll find broken ones, snipped up one, right? Doesn't mean it's going to turn into a disease unless we create the condition within the body for the certain diseases. Everybody on the planet has cancer cells in their body, every single human, but not everybody gets cancer.
Yeah. Interesting.
And not everybody, I'm not saying that people that get cancer are responsible for their cancer, right? I'm not blaming anybody for a disease process. I'm just saying certain people will create a condition in their body that gene that is a little bit screwed up has the environment it needs to go crazy, to create something else. And the easiest ones to recognize are the lifestyle diseases, are diabetes and cancer to a certain extent, but heart disease and diabetes. 75 to 80% of all people suffering could have less suffering and less symptoms if they could change their lifestyle habits.
Yeah. And
some people will do well on medication. Not everybody needs medication. Most people need a change of what they're eating and doing.
Yeah, and it's important. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute to say
sure.
that the diabetes, and then there's been this link to Alzheimer's recently. They're calling it the type 3 diabetes. So that's another thing to think about is some of these unhealthy habits, they lead to other things, in at the end of our life. And so whatever we can do to help minimize it, maybe we're predisposed to Alzheimer's anyway because of our genes and our family, but our unhealthy lifestyle, I guess, can contribute to making that a reality.
Absolutely. In the book Successful Aging by Daniel Levitin, he says that most people that live to 80 in a fairly healthy condition, everybody has a bump and a hurdle and a thing, right?
Right.
Somewhere after 80 is when disease processes start to kick in.
Okay.
And if you've done your homework or your longevity work until then, you can have a better chance of not succumbing to the most awful ones.
Yeah.
Oh.
You may then get heart disease. You may then have a kidney problem. You may then get dementia or a mild form, but you're not necessarily setting yourself up for the big Alzheimer's, cancer of. So I thought that was really interesting that many people who are practicing healthy habits have a good chance of living to 80 in a good frame of body and mind. And then, we have to be prepared for other things, but
Right. Yeah, and the other
you
part
know.
of that conversation, and I know this is way too much to cover, but just making a point
We're
is
going to
that,
do it anyway.
yeah, right. Just making the point that
You know how we are.
the, the doing the, there's been some research that I have read that's kind of linked our explosion of Alzheimer's today to our diet back in the 70s and early 80s when the low fat was huge. And so I guess everything in moderation. We need to have that fat intake because of the, I guess it kind of lubricates the receptors in our brain. And if you don't have enough, but then there's a myth that, well, our brains only run on the carbs, but there is some evidence that we can kind of switch that over to our brains can run on the fat intake. I'll let you expound on that just a little bit.
No, you did
Can
a
you
pretty good
interpret
job.
that?
So it's just a matter of reconditioning the brain to run on fat as fuel as opposed to sugar.
Yeah.
And that's where the keto diet comes into play.
Yeah.
It really reconditions people's whole metabolism and,
Right.
so the and fat, going back to the 80s, I did a talk for many years all about when Snackwells came in. Do you remember Snackwell
Yes.
cookies?
Oh, yes.
The low fat, finally low fat. In the, I think it was 3 years subsequent to because it really became a craze, like everything became low fat, right?
Right.
After that happened. Well, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think it was, the increase in heart disease and other kinds of diabetes and stuff like that went up like off the charts exponentially
Yeah.
because people had replaced healthy fats or even not such healthy fats, but they don't cause the glucose spike with a lot of sugar because
Yeah.
you got to put something back into the thing when you take something out of it, right?
Right.
And so what we were doing was causing this inflammatory response in the body through all these people with all of these low fat products.
Yeah.
And we really haven't recovered from that, I don't
Yeah.
think, even though they're not a big deal anymore. There are still low fat products. They're not like the go-to thing.
Right.
But so going back to your point about the brain, if we forget about, like, don't worry about low fat so much, worry about a balanced diet of healthy.
Right.
And if you think about a piece of, let's just take salmon. Salmon has a pretty high fat content. If you get deep water salmon, right? Cold water salmon, like Norway and Alaska and those. It's a natural package of fat, protein, and other nutrients. Even vegetables have fat and nutrients,
Yeah.
right? There's always a little bit of fat in almost every planet on the earth. Every piece of food that's natural to the earth, because that's what we're designed to have, a balance.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess before we wrap up, one thing it's suggestible is just go to your doctor and have all your blood work done and get these levels tested because that may actually show you where you're deficient, show you where you're over. I mean, that could be a big part of how we want to eat going forward if we knew that information, correct?
Oh yeah, and so I'm a cholesterol is not killing you, crazy person. Cholesterol is not the enemy, people. I eat a lot of fat. Certain people need more fat in their diet. I think probably a 40% fat in my diet. My triglycerides are like 58, which is low, right?
Okay.
My cholesterol is super healthy. So the people that fear that if they eat, well, if I put more fat in my diet, it's going to cause all these problems. It's
Right.
not. It may, depending on who you are, which is why, to your point, Roy, get your blood levels tested.
Right.
Have
right.
a full cardiac panel. Don't just get your cholesterol levels tested like LDL and HDL. Have them break the particles down, LDL, big, small, all that stuff. You need to know those numbers. And your inflammation numbers are really the sooner you find out if you have inflammation, the better it will be for you going forward because you can start to do things now to reduce that.
Yeah. Yeah, and whatever you do as well, I kind of push that we need to know the macronutrients or micronutrients that we take. And so, we have the app, we put stuff in because it's funny, even when we thought we were eating very healthy, there were still nutrients that we were totally deficient in. And so it's not the end all be all, but I think what it does, it helped us adjust our eating because we could say, okay, well, we're not getting enough of this. Maybe here's a food that we could add that could help us with that. Again, I know that's a lot of trouble, but if you have the time and the energy to do that, I think it can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I have to, again, like I said, I'm a bit of a bear when it comes to coaching. What's more important? If it takes a little time, what's more important than your health?
Exactly.
You want to be that one sitting watching the world go by, or do you want to say, I'm going to take a little bit of time every single day, 15 minutes,
Right.
to decide what I'm eating, or for the week to decide what I'm eating, and to make sure that I get enough nutrition, because I'm going to check in with Fitness Pal or whatever those apps are once a week and see how I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, I think we can't use those kinds of ways of thinking anymore, that it takes too much time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, thanks so much for taking time to be with us. It's a real pleasure talking to you. We love it. A lot of great information. So, before we get away, though, tell us, what is a habit that you have, a habit, an app, something that helps you professionally, personally, that you just couldn't live without, that adds a lot of value to your day?
Oh dear, you asked me this once before. I don't know what I said. An app threw me off. You know what I really love? There is an app called Headspace, and it is a meditation app, and
Okay.
it can be free or paid. And the guy who started it, I don't know how many voices there are. I think there's only two. They're English. I happen to love an English accent. You can put it on for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm not a big meditator. My meditation practice looks like my, I don't know, chess game. It's really bad. I don't even make a move usually. But some days I need to get out of my head. It's on my phone. I get in my comfortable chair over here. I put my earbuds in. I sit there. They talk to me. They tell me nice things, and I feel better. It's a simple little thing, but I
And a
love it.
really nice
Interesting.
accent.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, tell people how they can reach out. Tell them, first, who do you work with? How can they reach out, get a hold of you? Also, tell us where we can pick up a copy of the book.
Thank you for asking. So my website is Rebellious Wellness over 550, not spelled out, .com. And you can reach out literally by emailing me at gregory@rebelliouswellnessover50.com. But if you go to the website, I have a page there, that the little tab at the top, one of them says the book. And people can actually download the first, like I would say, section of the book. That's the philosophy
Okay.
behind the book, why I wrote it, where I was. And the reason those things are in there and I make it available to people is because it may not be the right thing for them. I don't like people to have to buy a whole book that they're not going to use. So this gives you pretty much a taste.
Oh, cool.
And I've got some products on the website, a lot of free stuff, information about sort of the same way we were talking today. So that's pretty much the best. And I have a podcast of the same name. You can find it on Apple and Stitcher and all those good places.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. That's going to do it for us. And you can always find us, of course, at www.feedingfatty.com. We're on all the major social media platforms, as well as video of this interview will be up on YouTube as well. When it goes live, we are on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, certainly reach out. We'll be glad to add you on. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks a lot, Gregory. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Bye-bye.